lousy. So, and HDL is the happy cholesterol.
Right.
That's the one you want high, HDL. So, but in terms of total and LDL cholesterol, you could have a significant reduction. One capsule of CholestaCare, say with each meal, maybe 2 capsules at a very large meal. All you need to do is take a minimum of 2 capsules daily, and what it can deliver is reductions of 10, 15, 20% or more. There's research clinical studies that show when you combine it with a healthy diet, high in fiber, lower saturated fat and cholesterol, you can get reductions of 40%, which we've seen in many, many reviews.
Andrew, is cholesterol and cholesterol issues associated with a certain time frame in your life where it starts to become more serious?
Not necessarily. Cholesterol in some of us can get worse as we get older, but like most things, as we get older, whatever, say if our numbers are a little out of line when we're young, that deviation becomes more meaningful and more problematic as we get older.
Right.
Certainly, there are a lot of things more important than cholesterol in terms of cardiovascular risk, like our blood pressure, like our blood sugar in my mind, like our overweight and obesity. Cholesterol becomes very meaningful at its extremes when it becomes significantly high. What's wonderful about CholestaCare is it can deliver such a significant reduction without side effect. So it could reduce, say if your cholesterol is 225, and it might not be enough to warrant taking a drug or medication, but it warrants concern. And your LDL might be 130, 140 or so. With using CholestaCare, you can reduce that, say, by 15 or 20%. All of a sudden, that cholesterol level could be 175, 180, 185, and your LDL can suddenly be 100 to 110, which dramatically will change your doctor's perspective on your cardiovascular risk, particularly in light of if you have other factors in play, like blood sugar or blood pressure, things like that. So it's something that's exceedingly effective. It works perfectly, just as Choco Nuvo does, with any cholesterol-lowering drug. The principal ones I think most people take are the statin drugs. Statin drugs work as an inhibitor of the HMG-CoA reductase in the liver. It inhibits cholesterol synthesis. Zetia works on sort of the metabolism of cholesterol in terms of the liver, so in terms of our digestive system. So Zetia is a different mechanism, but again, this works through your digestive system, so you don't have to worry about it having a negative impact with any of those drugs. What I've mentioned a couple of times, it's worthy of discussing with your doctor.
Yes.
Don't do this on your own, but talk to your doctor. If you take a statin drug, there's great research that says whatever benefit you're getting from that statin drug, especially if you're taking one of those with a longer half-life, like what is it, I think it's rosuvastatin, Crestor, a couple of the others, that you could go every other day and your numbers won't change. So, and when you go every other day, you're having your dose, you're dramatically reducing risk of side effect. With Zetia, the typical dosage, recommended dosage, is 10 milligrams. I think that's the only pill that's available, perhaps, that you could cut that in half at 5 milligrams, and I think the clinical studies have said that your cholesterol number will not really change significantly. Again, having the dose dramatically reduces side effects. So again, talk to your doctor about this. It's not necessarily something that your doctor might even be aware of, but there is research out there, and because I'm always drowning in research, I might as well share it. And again, don't act upon it on your own, just talk to your doctor about it.
If you're looking to lower your cholesterol, certainly investigate this product. And you know, I think for a lot of us, when we think about reviews and people commenting on something, it is human nature that the most of us leave negative reviews, or we're more open to complain about something if it's not right. Well, with Andrew, it's the complete reverse of that. Folks, there are thousands of people that say, oh my gosh, I have to share my story. And this is a great example.
Oh no, CholestaCare is, in terms of reviews, it's one of those products where the numbers, the numbers don't lie. And also, with all the pressure the FDA had from the drug companies to not approve a natural ingredient to lower total and LDL cholesterol, for the FDA to do that, all it speaks is to the reliability of that ingredient, the trustworthiness of the ingredient, the safety of the ingredient. So it's a natural product. It doesn't come with any side effects or warnings, but it's a wonderful way to do something that we all seek, but most of the time when we have to seek outside to fix it, we're fixing it with a drug or medication, which comes with side effects and issues, and we want to do that, again, as carefully, cautiously, as judiciously as possible, and many people aren't candidates for taking the statin drug.